I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of
Hello everyone, welcome to Bongma TV. I am here alone, but the opinions that I have are not my opinions only. I'm going to also be speaking on behalf of my husband, Bongani Ngobese. Okay, as we saw last week, Bongani was sharing on ways to keep your wife happy. So this week we were talking about what topic will we be discussing on this Sunday, as we will be coming to your homes every Sunday just talking about marriage and topics pertaining to marriage. So this Sunday I am so excited. I want us to talk about the 3 types of marriage contracts that we have. Some of you might be looking at me and thinking, what contract are you talking about? As most of us don't even know about the fact that there's a marriage contract, because all we know is that you get married, you say your I do's, and you don't really know that in terms of the law, what you're actually getting yourself into. Okay? Most couples by default, they get married under the in community of property contract, which is the contract you get into if you don't sign an antenuptial, which is abbreviated as an ANC. Okay, so I felt this topic was important because as we grew in marriage, Sinobongani, as we realized we want to venture into other things, then we saw the importance of actually making an informed decision pertaining the type of contract that you go into emshadweni wakho. Do you remember there used to be a story in Kalanyonini, story sakaMadlanduna, and there was this lady Beauty, and they always called her Umfazwe Pepper, you know? So what is lepepa actually, you know? So the reason we were talking about this, Nobongani, and thinking that we should get it out there so that people who are about to get married, or you know, newlyweds, and even people who are married can actually know what type of contract they're into. So we have been made to believe Uguti, being married in community of property means you are in it for the long run. But honestly speaking, being married in community of property has its pros and cons. Okay, so number one, we've been married for 11 years now. On the 29th, this Friday, it's our 11th year anniversary. Okay, when we got married, we got married because we were in it for the long run. It was a risk we were both willing to take because none of us knew what would happen in terms of, will I change, you know, will he change or whatever, but this was a risk that we were willing to take. Okay, so when you're married in community of property, which means ukuthi, whatever assets, whatever liabilities I have or Bongani has, you know, before we got married, and whatever assets and liabilities we accumulate during our marriage. When you are married in community of property, it means that in the unfortunate event of a divorce or a death, that all our assets and all our liabilities will be cut into half. So whatever I owe, Bongani owes. You see, whatever he owns, I own. So most of the time, you know, people think, oh, when we get divorced or when we get, you know, when we die or what. Actually, people don't think about the dying part when they are married. They only think or when they sign the contracts or get into a marriage, they only think about the divorce. But I've had a personal experience where my dad passed away and I saw the negative impact of being married in community of property. Okay, that's point number one. So I think we all understand, if you don't sign an antenuptial, you are by default married in community of property. Good. Then there is signing an antenuptial, which is something you have to do before you get married. Okay, so what happens is there's two types of antenuptial contracts. There is out of community of property with accrual. What does that mean? So whatever I own, whatever Bongani owns before we get married remains that. Like if I own a car before we get married, it continues being my car under my name. If he owns a car, it's his car under his name. Then we get married. Out of community of property means that with accrual, what it means is that as soon as we get married, whatever assets and liabilities that we accumulate during the marriage, then at the end of the marriage, or if one of us dies, then we share half of everything that we have accumulated during the marriage. Does it make sense? So with accrual is that during the marriage. Okay. So we're going to share, like if he accumulates 10 million while we are married, then I'm going to get half of his 10 million. If I accumulate 5 billion during our marriage, then he gets half of that. I wonder if you knew this information that I'm giving to you now. But if you didn't, right now is the time. Okay, good. So that's out of community of property with accrual. Then there is out of community of property without accrual. Oh, sorry, before I go to that one, the one with accrual, it does not include, let's say I get an inheritance while I'm married, then that does not count as the money we're going to divide or as the assets we're going to divide. Or if I get a donation from a lovely friend of mine of 5 billion rands, that will not count in terms of how we separate the assets. Good. Then there is out of community of property without accrual. What that means is that what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. Okay? What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. Before we get married, during the marriage, no one shares anything for whatever reason. So that's the third type of contract, which is an antenuptial, married out of community of property without accrual. That only means that Dali, sweetie, that's what it means. So with that being said, when you get married, maybe you're not sure whether you're gonna get into business or not. But if your spouse, like my Ubongani has a business, Kronos Holdings. So if we are married in community of property, then should his business become insolvent or should his business become broke, that means automatically it affects our assets. And should his business owe, let's say 30 million rand, then the people he owes they have every right to come and take the assets that we own together because of how we are married. So believe it or not, these things become important in the long run. And it's important that as Christians, as, married people, we should know these things and we should be able to discuss these things beforehand without even making them feel like you are planning to get divorced or you are being negative. Because the truth of the matter is, we are married and this is life. Life happens. But when it happens, you don't want to be shocked at what you have gotten yourself into because you were not making an informed decision. You didn't have the right information in deciding how you get married. Okay, so to those who might be thinking that maybe having an antenuptial out of community of property with accrual is your choice, or out of community of property without accrual, maybe you decide that's your choice, there's a way. But because now you are deciding 11 years later or 15 years later that you actually think you didn't get married using the right contract, there's a price you're going to have to pay. And what you get then is a post-nuptial contract, okay? So a post-nuptial contract is you changing your status of being married from being married in community of property to being married out of community of property, and then you make your choice whether it's with accrual or without accrual, based on the decisions that you're going to sit down as a couple and decide together what do you think is going to work for the both of you, and have, your reasons. Because at the end of the day, when you are married, you are on the same team. And it depends on what you are trying to achieve. If someone is trying to build, like maybe build a business and they don't want it to really affect the finances at home, then you decide based on those things. But before I leave, I just want you to know that it's super, super, super important for you to have a will. Because a will make it easier that should you die, then your assets can be, given to the people that you want your assets to be given to, so that there is no one who will decide on your behalf. Because when you are 6 feet under, unfortunately, you cannot decide for yourself. And drawing up a will or having a will doesn't mean you are negative or you are wishing that your spouse must die. No, it has nothing to do with that. But it's all about being prepared. It's all about making sure ukuthi izinto zakho zime ngomumo. You don't want to leave this earth and leave your family, poor, or leave them with debt, or leave them with a worse off life than what you had already started creating for them. Okay, so we'll be talking about topics such as this, things that are not usually spoken about as we celebrate our 11 years of marriage. We're going to be going through the things that, that have kept us, the conversations that we've had to have, and everything else in between, the controversial topics about marriage, about, staying together. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, please subscribe, and please leave your comments. Any questions that you have, we are more than welcome to answer those questions. And that's it from Kwangobese on Bongma TV. Out of community of property, with accrual or without accrual, in community of property. What is your choice and why?